Hello, Year 4. Today's Tuesday, the 2nd of March, and today's learning question is: can I infer what is happening in the text? You're going to need your Key Stage 2 Comprehension Workbook number 2, and this is for the children who have the Year 4 question book. Okay, so just as a warm up to warm our brains up, I've put some images on the board of some different types of stories. And my question to you today is: what do we mean by myths and legends? What are myths and legends? So I've got George and the Dragon, I've got a combination of three different animals here, and I've got the Loch Ness Monster. So think back to when you learnt about the Loch Ness Monster. What do we mean by myths and legends? Have a think. Okay, this is a clue as to what you're going to be doing today. Have a think. Okay, so we've got some new vocabulary today that I'm just going to go over with you. So you need to listen very carefully. And I've added some pictures to help to explain what I mean by some of this vocabulary, okay? So the word summit is the peak to the very, very top point of the mountain. So when you hear people describe when they've walked up a mountain, they'll say, oh, we reached the summit. And that means they reached the highest point, they reached the top, okay? Now, the word arrogant means someone who is very, very confident and thinks they know every answer to everything, and they like to believe that they stand out from everyone else. They might be overly confident with things and they'll give everything a go, even if they are wrong. But arrogant people like to share all of their achievements that they have ever done, and they almost see everything as a competition. So if you scored 10 out of 10 in your spellings, they'd probably say, well, I've scored 10 out of 10 every single time I've had a spelling test ever. Or you might say something that you were really proud of. So you might say, I'm really proud that I learned to ride my bike on my own without my stabilisers the other day. And they'd perhaps say something like, well, I learned to ride my bike without stabilisers when I was 3. So they make you feel a little bit bad about yourselves, okay? Now, a myth is a story that isn't quite true, okay? So have a think about the previous slide. Were you right? We've got the word vain here, and we've got a picture of a man looking at himself. Let me make it a bit bigger so you can see. Looking at himself with love hearts because he quite fancies himself. So the word vain means that you really like to look at yourself, you really like your appearance, you look at yourself a lot in mirrors, photographs, okay? So you just really like the way that you look. And then we've got a man that stood here doing this. And the word is vengeful. So vengeful is a word that we use when someone is perhaps not too happy with the actions that other people have done to them, and they feel like they might need to act on it. Okay, so it might not be it's not a very nice word that we use to describe people, but it's usually used when people feel like they need to act on something that's happened, and it might not be a very nice way of acting in response to the event. Okay, so the text that you're looking at today is called The Story of Noir, and it is fiction, but it is a myth, and it originated from China. So the story was originally written in China, and it has now been translated, and we've been given the story um, the, in English so we can read it. Now, there might be some differences in between the original story from China and the one that we read today, but that'll be because of the translation. And it is a myth, so that it's a story that's thousands of hundreds of years old, and it is fiction, so it's not the truth, it's not real. Okay, so you're going to have read through this text at least twice, and you're going to have picked out any words that you are stuck on. Now, I'm going to go through a couple of the questions with you, but as always, I expect you to have a really good go on your own, um, because you're getting fantastic at this, and this is actually your very last comprehension video, until you have to come back into school. So I think that you would be absolutely superstars at this by now. So I want you to try your best to do it on your own. But there are some things in here that we've not actually come across before that I'm just going to talk you through. So please listen carefully, take your time and do not rush. So question 1 says, which of the following words is closest in meaning to flaws? So flaws is something that you aren't happy with about yourself. So I might say, I think my flaw is that I don't listen carefully enough to my mum and dad, or I struggle to follow instructions, or I would say one of my flaws is that I bite my nails when I'm nervous. Okay. So a flaw is something that you aren't quite happy about with yourself. So I'm going to go through the words that you've been given. Now, the idea of this question is they're after a synonym that means the same thing as flaw, but it's just a different word, okay? So I'll go through them with you and just give a brief definition of them, and then you can decide whether or not it matches the word flaws. The first one that you have is problem, okay? Now, similar words are things like difficulty, issue, trouble, worry, complication. So it's a matter or a situation which is seen as not wanted, so unwelcome or harmful, and it needs to be dealt with and overcome. So an example would be they had financial problems. So that means they struggled to pay for certain things. So they were struggling financially, which is another word for money. They were struggling to pay for things. So that would have been a problem that they would have had to overcome. My next word is weakness. So words here, frailty, fragile, fault, flaw, defect, deficiency, failing or foible. And it's disadvantage or fault. So it's something that you identify yourself as needing to work on a little bit, or it's being seen as being weak. So there's two different meanings. So seen as being weak, or a weakness could be name a weakness of driving to school over walking to school, and it would be, well, cars contribute to CO2 emissions, so that means that we're harming the environment when we drive in our car. That would be a weakness of using our car. Okay, so I hope that that makes sense. My next word is strength. So that's being physically strong, okay? Or it's being able to withstand a lot of pressure. So, for example, a skyscraper would have to be physically strong because of the amount of weight that it has to take, okay? So, words that are similar to the word strength, to the noun strength, are power, brawn, muscle, firmness, toughness, solid, okay? So what do you think? Does that match the word flaw? And my last one is feeling. So again, another noun. It's an emotional state or reaction. It's an idea. It's a belief. Okay, so feeling can be associated with words like love, care, affection, fondness, tenderness, warmth. It could be suspicion, notion, hunch, a fancy. Okay, and a sentence that would describe feeling would be a feeling of joy. Okay, so you need to just revisit the words that I've just discussed with you and think very carefully about which one matches the word flaw. Okay, question 2 is asking you to find a word that's been used instead of said in line 7. And why do you think the author chose this word? So you need to find the synonym for the word said, and it's a word that has the same meaning, it's just spelled differently. And then you need to think, why has the author used the word hasn't used the word said and has used this other word instead of as a replacement? Okay, so have a think. Why might they have used the word said? Or not used the word said, sorry. So, question 4 is asking you to give 2 features of the text that suggests it's a myth. So myths and legends, they are stories used to explain why things are the way they are in the world around us. So there's usually like a moral behind them. And features would be things like a character that's a god or a goddess fighting and living in the ancient world. So it might be ancient Greece, Egypt, China. And the hero is usually the main character. So you've got a feature of the main character being a hero and there being gods and goddesses. Now, their keywords might be mortal, hero, immortal, heroine, um, heavens, nymphs, monsters, underworld, creatures, and beginning of time. They might be set in places like heavens, earth, the underworld. They might be set in ancient cities, or it might be set in another world that isn't the same as ours. Okay, so there's lots of different things there that you can draw on to identify two features that suggest it is a myth. Okay, if you need to revisit this slide, revisit it, and it'll help you to identify the two features that you need to look for. Okay. And your challenge for today, so you have got some more questions after question 4, but they're asking for opinion. So you're going to read very carefully and give your opinion. Now, there is no right or wrong when you give your opinion. You're all getting really good at developing an understanding of how to share your opinion in those answers. So don't be scared about getting it wrong because there is no right or wrong. Your challenge for today is to retell today's story by drawing a story map. You've all had to go at drawing a story map before. I've got 3 examples on here. You can find these online. That's where I found them, that you can use for some ideas for how you might need to draw your story map. So we're going on a bear hunt, we've got owl babies, and we've also got lost and found. So you usually draw some images and then an arrow to show you the next thing. Okay, so that's your challenge for today. Can you retell this story using a story map? So can you draw it as a story map for me? And your reflection for today is what went well. So can you list something that went well? What worked out? What was good about today's lesson? Okay, and I will see you all tomorrow. Please don't forget to send in any of your work for this video using the Year 4 email address, and we will get back to you as soon as we can with some feedback. And I will see you all for another video tomorrow. Bye.